Yeah,
Yes, please.
great. Namaste and welcome everyone to our discussion today. My name is Shailendra Yashwant. I'm an independent photojournalist who has been actively involved in climate justice movement for last 15, 20 years. I'm your host today. I'm also the lead author of the report that we are launching today, No Vaccine for Climate Change. But before we begin, first and foremost, let me express on behalf of the organizers, partners, all the participants, our sincere gratitude and appreciation to the healthcare community, all of you, clinical, non-clinical, for helping us tide over one of the biggest challenges, the latest manifestation of climate change, if you like, or at least the drivers of climate change. And thank you for saving lives. Thank you for bringing us across. Thank you very much. We have doctors today who have gone beyond the call of their duty as medical personnel. Dr. Arvind Kumar is here. Dr. Ravikant Singh is here. Dr. Molly Mehta. We also have Dr. Kamlesh Jain from uh, Chhattisgarh, Dr. Veena from Karnataka, Dr. Manu from Kerala, all of whom are government departments who are engaged in both providing healthcare and aid work during this difficult time. So thank you very much. We also have Sanjay Vashisht, Director of Climate Action Network South Asia. He's an old hand on climate negotiations and of course leads one of the largest climate action network in the region in South Asia. We will later have or not have an announcement later. Dr. Maria Naira, she's the Director of Public Health and Environment of World Health Organization. But before we start, a little context and a little background on our report and our discussion today. And for that, I would like to thank Shweta Narayan and her team at Healthy Energy Initiative, Pooja Kumar and Vishwaja Sampath. Also, Aarti Khosla of Climate Trends, Healthy Energy Initiative and Healthcare Without Harm for acting on a very, very important and a long identified need to help the climate movement engage with public health professionals, the frontliners, people who are both helping us adapt and cope, but also survive the worst impacts of climate change. To start this process, last year, Healthy Energy Initiative conducted first of its kind, I'm told, survey to understand knowledge, attitude, and practice of healthcare professionals on climate change in India. The report was released in February earlier this year, and not surprisingly, awareness of the term climate change was very high amongst healthcare professionals. The slides show 93% of health professionals knew the basics of climate change. However, only 55% of them were actively involved in raising awareness or participated in any climate change related activities. So one of them, this full survey has been launched as a separate report. Part of the survey, the main findings is also a chapter in the report that we are releasing today, link of which will be shared very soon. Uh, One major finding of this report was a need for comprehensive and nuanced information on the subject in one single user-friendly document. And that is what this document is trying to do. It is not everything about climate change, especially not the most updated information, as more and more studies are coming out practically every month. But a set of all questions answered and how to talk about climate change. And that's what we've tried to address in this report as it came as a finding from our earlier survey. So today is the official launch of that report. It's being translated in Malayalam, Kannada, of course, Hindi, and many other languages. And we will keep you updated on as those reports come out later this month. Before we start, a few housekeeping tips. Please type your questions, specific questions to specific panelists in the Q&A box. You're welcome to add your views and your opinions in the chat box. My colleague Gunjan Jain of Climate Trends and Shweta as well is keeping an eye on both these boxes, and we hope to address your queries as we go. Remember, questions to panelists in Q&A boxes and your views in the chat box. The announcement I mentioned earlier is that unfortunately, our keynote speaker, Dr. Myra Naira, will not be able to join in person at this point in the meeting, but she has been kind enough to record and send us a video message of today's discussion to start us off. This is a very important conversation. I think the climate movement has been waiting to engage with you people and hear your views of the health community, of the health professionals, and we look forward to your guidance and insights on how we best engage with the biggest challenge of the century. Welcome, Aarti. Welcome, everyone. And may I now request Gunjan to uh, play Dr. Maria's message, and then I will introduce the speakers as we invite them in as they're still joining. Yeah, thank you.
Dear friends, excellencies, dear colleagues, dear Professor Kumar, dear anyone who is fighting with passion to tackle the causes of climate change, recognizing that this is about public health. Who will disagree that we have an incredible role as health professionals on driving and leading even this healthy and green recovery? Who will disagree with the fact that our voice is more needed than ever? We need to be a role model, we need to be a champion, we need to lead by example, and more than anything, we need to provide the right arguments. Years ago, our health professionals were fighting for making sure that people will have access to safe water, to sanitation. Unfortunately, that battle is still ongoing, but we have been doing an incredible revolution in that sense. Today, our battle is for air to breathe. I know that is very sad. We don't need to fight to breathe clean air, but unfortunately, this is the situation today. We need to raise our voices, which are still very much credible for the society, to make sure that the people will recognize the strong linkages between air pollution, climate change, and human health. We are at an incredible historical moment where, again, the voice of the health professionals will be very much appreciated and recognized as an important contribution. Health has to be the motivation, the driving force to do more action to tackle the causes of climate change, to make sure that our food systems will be more sustainable, to make sure that the transition to healthy sources of energy will be quicker, faster, and more ambitious, to make sure that our mayors will recognize as urban planning, a healthy urban planning, as a critical need for their population. We need to make sure that we are at front as well on stopping this nonsense of destroying nature, ecosystem, and biodiversity. I'm sure that our voice will be altogether a very, very strong instrument, an instrument that we can use after COP26 at any fora where the politicians will have an opportunity to hear us and to take decisions. Yesterday was the G7. Soon there will be other important meetings. But again, the people like you, like me, the health professionals, we still need to have a very strong role, making sure that not only we work at our hospitals, treating and providing therapeutics for our people, but making sure that our people will not be sick. And now we need to make sure that everybody understands that we do not renounce to that important role of not only treating but preventing, which is more important than ever. Our economics are very much depending on that as well, on our decisions. Let's join our voices. Let's keep initiatives like this one working. Let's make sure that our networks are stronger than ever, and let's make sure that your success will be our success, and the protection of people will be the ultimate goal that we will all be able to reach. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Be very successful.
Thank you. That was Dr. Maria Neira, Director of Public Health and Environment at the World Health Organization. She's quite easily one of the biggest leading global voices on climate action and clean air. And she's been driving the point of health in many international forums. Like she said, health should be our main motivation for tackling climate change and all other issues related to that. And one important thing, of course, you mentioned COP26. These are the international forums where decisions are being taken on what climate action will look like. And I think that segues straight into our first guest today, Sanjay Vashisht, Director of Climate Action Network, South Asia. And like I said, he's involved in all the multilateral processes and representing India and the region. Uh, the question I would ask him is where and how does he see the health professionals engaging in the international process? How is health being discussed in these at the UNFCCC? And basically, eh, well, in a nutshell, can health play a vital role in international climate policy making? So yeah, Sanjay, all yours.
Thanks, Shai. Thanks for inviting me. I think I would like to start by the title that has been given to me, Shai. Climate Policy Landscape in COP26. Can health play a vital role? I think I would like to flip it a little bit. I would like to say that health professionals can play a vital role in making COP26 a COP which addresses health as a challenge, a challenge being faced from the climate change. Having said that, I think let me go through the international process, Shai, and I'll start with impacts, which WRI has done a very good study. We are also partnering with them in many other projects, not this one, but I think almost 59 countries has already identified human health as a priority in their national climate adaptation plans. So just to make it very simple to all the health professionals who have joined and may not be following the international process, all countries have submitted what they would like to do to address climate change, and health has figured in all the action plans. Almost 59% countries have, and in other countries it's indirectly health is there. But then there is many countries struggle on how to address them. Maybe lack of knowledge. It's not lack of interest. It's not that it is not a priority, but there is a lack of knowledge on how to address them. And one indicator to see that how less we are doing to address impact of climate change on health is only 0.5% of multilateral climate finance targets are health projects. Rest all are agriculture, disaster reduction, water sanitation, or WASH we call it, but not health. Sanitation is also there, but not health. Health is still not there. And what health impact of climate change does on health is there is an increased risk of vector and waterborne diseases. There is an increased risk to livelihoods and lives and livelihoods, which ultimately has impact on nutritional value, also nutritional of the people. And then of course there is a great risk of social inequalities because for poor it's increased expenses of health, and thus there is a cut in expenses of food. There is increased expenses of on medicine. So ultimately it leads to social inequalities. If we look at how climate change impacts health sector, we can see extreme weather events are being caused by climate change. Heat stress is being caused by climate change. Decrease of water quality and quantity is another challenge being posed. These are direct manifestations: temperature, precipitation, and sea level rise. These are three direct manifestations which is affecting sectors and causing disasters. And disasters are becoming more extreme. And it's not only extreme, but also slow onset disasters which are affecting. So for example, what extreme events does: landslides, wildfires, floods, storms. The ripple effect is injuries, mental health effects, including trauma and stress. That's one ripple effect. If there is a heat stress, there is a rise in average temperature, extreme hot days, heat waves, and the heat island effect in urban areas especially. Respiratory and cardiovascular conditions and allergies are observed. people with pre-existing conditions and the elderly are particularly vulnerable. So this infographic certainly shows that how there is indirect effect, but not very indirect. Uh, Disaster hit directly the health of societies, and that certainly has the effect of which amplifies the impact. Uh, Having looked at all the international process which is going on, UNFCCC process, there is a there are G20, G7 group of countries also. So all those processes are going on. It's actually in Paris Agreement, Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage, which has plenty of space to bring in health as a sector, which we need to look at. Warsaw International Mechanism for Loss and Damage basically was established in 2013 in Warsaw in Poland, and to facilitate support of action to address loss and damage, permanent losses and temporary losses of damage also. Improve coordination, convene meetings, promote the development of compiled. So there is a platform where health professionals can come, work with scientists, work with other sectors also, and basically take the agenda forward. Somehow we are missing your participation. Huge contribution is missing from your end, and we know you can certainly bring in a lot more knowledge which is required. For example, providing technical guidance and support, make recommendations on how to deal with it. So that's what Warsaw International Mechanism can actually is waiting to hear from health professionals. Warsaw International Mechanism is actually mandated in Paris Agreement as a clearinghouse for risk transfer. How to transfer risk? In fact, if I look at the second bullet point here, the task force to develop recommendations, my personal observation, Shai, is that we are talking about addressing the impacts, but how to avert and minimize the impact, that's where we are missing participation. Address impact would mean, I would say dengue or chikungunya or any other new contagious disease that are coming. You all are in hospitals dealing with as front warriors. So salute to you, but I think how to avert and minimize them, and that's where we are missing your participation. So certainly how to transfer risk that serves as repository for information or insurance and risk transfer. So that's what Warsaw International Mechanism need to look at. Functions, enhancing knowledge and understanding of comprehensive risk management approaches. How to do that? We don't know. Honest, I'm an natural resource management person. I can, conceptualize how natural resource management should work on it. Forestry, agriculture, farm-based livelihoods. That's my strength. But health, other than checking my temperature, I don't know what to do about it. So certainly we need expertise from you all. Strengthening dialogue, coordination, coherence, synergies among relevant stakeholders. And thank you for organizing this event together with us, because that's one way of strengthening the dialogue. You are interacting with colleagues who are following climate negotiations, who are practicing climate solutions on ground, and certainly your inputs are most welcome here. Enhancing action and support, including finance, technology, and capacity building. As I said earlier, there is only 0.5% of the climate finance so far going into health sector, not more than that, and which is not much. If we look at 2-3 slides, Shai, if we look at how it is impacted, there are two kinds of events. One is a slow onset event, and another sets are extreme events. Extremes are cyclones, droughts, floods. Slow onsets are degradation, desertification, increasing temperature. In fact, if I try to use an analogy in your in your field, then it's slow poison and a fast poison. Slow onset events are slow poison, which is degrading the ecosystem, which is causing permanent losses and is not visible, while there is a pandemic kind of thing which comes immediately and destroys everything. So that's the these are two kind of disasters that we are looking at. Economic losses can be recovered, can be relocated, rehabilitated. It's the non-economic losses, and health sector comes into non-economic losses where we need to work and much more work is required, because that is directly linked with the health of individuals, and health of individual ensures a healthy society, and that means we are looking to we can move towards a sustainable future. Otherwise, it won't be possible. I'll skip these, but then I would like to, as I said here also, health as a non-economic losses. Non-economic doesn't mean that it's not valuable. In fact, it's the non-economic value that ensures economic value later on. So healthy society is important, and that's where health professionals can certainly come in, contribute. For example, how do we deal with uh, what kind of medication need to be supported by government um, uh, in heat stress areas. So those kind of things need to go into the policy, and great, we heard from WHO also, and there is an emphasis on that. In terms of milestone, we are under the implementation phase of 5-year loss and damage working plan. Of course, almost only 1 year left. It started in 2018, 2 years left. But there's plenty of space. XCOM meetings takes place every 6 months. They meet during COP. They present their reports also. I think that's what we need to review, whether those reports are captures the health sector appropriately, or it is still missing. We can certainly do some preparatory meetings before participating in XCOMs. You can. I know you all are very busy. COVID is one which is keeping you busy for last 1.5 years. But then you can certainly pass on that information, which we can take on behalf of collective society, and that could be one mode of working. I'll stop here, Shai. I think that's yeah. Thank you, Shai.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you very much, because these are even I was looking at Warsaw International Mechanism and wondering how do we get our friends from the health community to actually start engaging in that process. And I think we have an opportunity slowly building up. Thank you, Sanjay. You've actually given us a task list to follow up. That was very interesting. Next, we have a local legend, if you like, Dr. Arvind Kumar. He's a well-known and a leading chest surgeon, but more legend for us because he's one of the foremost champions for clean air. And under his leadership, Doctors for Clean Air and Climate Action is bringing together health leaders from all over India to demand clean air for all, which, Sanjay, as you know, is one of the things that is a climate action solution. Dr. Kumar is not only trustee of Lung Care Foundation and Doctors for Clean Air. He is actually engaged with the climate action community from the backward channels. And now I'm hoping with his guidance and with more collaboration in future, we see more engagement in the international forums also. So, sir, welcome. Thank you for making time. And you are going to tell us what critical intervention your sector, health sector, prescribes to mitigate against the future risks of climate change on respiratory disorders specifically.
Okay.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Shai Yashwant, for the very kind words. And before I start, my humble and sincere thanks to Healthy Energy Initiative, Healthcare Without Harm, and particularly Shweta, Gunjan, and all others who've been involved with this fantastic work of the study which they carried out, and also the initiative to launch that study and bring this into focus even in the midst of this COVID pandemic. So thank you very much, and a very warm good morning, good afternoon to all of you. Before we actually, the task assigned to me is to write a prescription for this air pollution / climate change problem, particularly keeping lungs in mind. But I think before we, just as we do in our day-to-day practice, that before we write the prescription, we take the history from the patient, we examine, we look at what is the cause, what is the disease, what is the problem, what problem patient is facing, and keeping all that into mind, then you actually give the final prescription, which is the last step. Because prescription is very simple, but before I reach that, and for that prescription to become acceptable to people, I need to show some slides, some facts, some data, which for many of you, it may be a repetition, but even at the cost of repetition, I think it would be necessary it would be important to go through that. So if I can just start sharing my slides. Mr. Shai, are the slides visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Yes.
first question is, why should we be talking about this and why should we be needing to write a prescription? As I said, for many of you, it may be a repetition. Please pardon me. But still, since we have many people joining, maybe for some, it would be important to set the context right. And ladies and gentlemen, I cannot have any talk on air pollution or climate change without actually showing this pair of slides, because this has been the most important turning point in my life, which actually brought me out from the operation theater into the public space to become a champion for clean air. On your left is the picture of a healthy pink lung, which is kind of thing we are born with. And on your right is the picture of the lung of a city dweller. Now, when I took this picture was of a Delhiite. But let me tell you that today, whether you are in Delhi or Mumbai or Kolkata or Chennai or any other city in India, your lungs are not likely to be better than what this shows. And even worse is this teenager. This one is born and brought up in Delhi, showing these black deposits on the surface of the lung. But same condition exists in the lungs of children across the country. And we have actually ourselves seen this, the effect of that in the form of a study that we carried out regarding the incidence of asthma, which I'm not discussing here, but which revealed startling findings, which we'll be revealing after some time. So ladies and gentlemen, there is a huge amount of damage which is being caused to the lungs by the air pollution. And when I say air pollution, I mean air pollution as well as climate change, because the drivers of both are same and the consequences, the final effect of both are same. So friends, the health is really badly getting affected. And why is all this happening? All this is happening because unfortunately, for surviving, each one of us needs to breathe about 25,000 times a day. And when we breathe, in the school, I was taught that air has 20% oxygen and rest is nitrogen. But today, when we talk of contents of the air, oxygen is just one thing, but then carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, nitric oxides, carbon monoxide, VOCs, lead, mercury, ozone, particulate matter. These are, ladies and gentlemen, the new constituents of the air that they breathe. And these constituents added by us, by our actions, or if I call them wrong actions, they go inside our body and play havoc with our health. And that is what has led to WHO calling polluted air as a cancer-causing agent, and also stating that in terms of damage to our health, breathing polluted air is same as smoking. And therefore, I have the courage to say that in a polluted country, there is no non-smoker. Everybody, as long as you are breathing, you are a smoker. And friends, that includes the newborns also, because when a newborn is born, he or she breathes the same air that we adults breathe. So if we are breathing polluted air and that's making us smoker, the newborn who takes the same air is also a smoker. So therefore, in polluted cities, the breathing kills. The killing starts from the time you come out of your mother's womb and start taking your first breath. In fact, now there is data to say that this pollution does not wait for you to come out of the mother's womb. It starts hurting you, harming you, even when you are in one of the safest places on earth, that is your mother's womb. There is data now to show that the effects of air pollution start affecting you even before you are born. When a mother is breathing toxic air, These toxins are going into her blood, passing through the placenta, and now studies have shown these particles to be present in the placenta. They cross the placenta and start harming the baby even before the baby is born. So there is evidence now that the harm starts in the intrauterine life, continues once you come out and start your breath. So therefore, if you breathe, which all of us do, you are under attack. And then the unborn babies, the children, the elderly, all of us are affected. Normally, people talk of only lungs as the organs which are affected. But friends, I want to share with you this slide, which tells us the organs which are affected. And ladies and gentlemen, I would request you to please look at the list of organs which is there to tell you which are the organs. So look at the list on the left and right, and you will realize the pollution not only affects the lungs, but it affects every organ in the body. And that's why it's important that we start working on it. We are all passing through this pandemic. A lot of people ask me, why has the pandemic started occurring with such regularity? So we had SARS, we had MERS, we had H1N1, and now we are having this COVID. This is because there is cross infection. I'm also asked often whether people living in high pollution cities are more susceptible. Yes, they have higher incidence of respiratory, cardiac and other system diseases, and therefore they have higher incidence of acquiring COVID and higher incidence of dying of COVID. And therefore, definitely, Delhi mortality in the last 2 months was much higher than the average national mortality. So what should we do, friends? Clean air has to be made a human right. The time to act actually was many, many years ago, but our ancestors did not do that. They did not act in time. They only messed up the situation and have left a bad situation for us. And we are also messing it up today and are likely to lead a worse situation for our children. So the time to act is now, because if we don't act today, millions and millions of people will die. Whenever I'm interviewed for these air pollution issues, 100% of the times, the last question that every journalist asks me is, sir, please tell me a way, how do we protect our lungs from pollution? And now I have started taking objection to that question. I said, why are you people being so self-centered and selfish? Instead of asking the question, how do I protect my lungs from air pollution? Why don't you change the narrative and say, how do we protect the air from getting polluted? And air pollution and climate change is the same. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm referring to is time and again, I hear from people about measures to clean up the air. There is more focus on measures to clean up the air. So first you make it dirty and then you spend billions of dollars to clean it up. Instead of that, I request that the solution is to strike at the sources of pollution to prevent the air from getting polluted. And when I say air pollution, I mean air pollution and climate change. For me, that's a continuum which exists from one end to the other. Anybody who says that let the air remain polluted, we'll start cleaning it up, probably does not know the extent of the problem. So ladies and gentlemen, with that introduction, I come to the prescription. Now you know that polluted air is killing us badly. And as long as the air remains polluted, as long as the climate change keeps occurring, it's going to continue to kill us. What is the source of all this pollution? There is only one source of all this pollution, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is rampant usage of fossil fuels by all of us. Rampant uses of fossil fuels of all kinds, whether it is solid fossil fuel or a liquid fossil fuel, there is only one source which is polluting the environment and killing all of us. And therefore, final slide, final message, ladies and gentlemen, the prescription is to stop using this fossil fuel. If you want to lead a healthy life, you have to stop using this fossil fuel and change to cleaner sources of energy. If we don't stop the use of fossil fuels, Ladies and gentlemen, all of us have a very gloomy feature. Human beings will continue to die, and more than us, it is the next generation, our children, our most precious asset, who will continue to die and pay the price for our continuing to use the fossil fuel. Last word, the way to stop this is to stop using fossil fuels and shift right now, whatever way, whatever it costs, shift to cleaner sources of energy. Thank you very much. Mr. Shai, over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. As always, inspiring, reminding us of the realities and asking us to take action. And yes, fossil fuels, fossil fuels, fossil fuels. Very slow movement on the phasing out of fossil fuels, but we shall always be hopeful. And like sir said, for the next generation, for our children, we have to take action now. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Uh, I mean, when you talk about clean air, you talk about drivers of climate change and how we address those drivers of climate change. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, Dr. Ravikant Singh. He's also a legend. He's specialist in development of public health systems for emergency preparedness and response capacity across India and South Asian countries. He's the founder of Doctors for You. It's one of the leading medical humanitarian organizations in India. I know of their work, especially from Kerala post floods. He's currently officer in charge at Homi Bhabha Cancer Hospital in Muzaffarpur. And today he's going to talk to us about climate crisis and how do frontline doctors actually engage with the climate crisis, and what do policymakers need to do to build health sector resilience. Dr. Ravikant Singh, sir.
Thank you, Yaswant sir, and thanks for inviting me. So, like Dr. Arvind Kumar talk is superb. Like these pictures
Yes.
should be included into our curriculum. In fact, the first thing I noted down the three action point because now there is no time to talk or explain the link between climate change and health. We are into health because of this. And as Dr. Arvind said that the major issue is fossil fuel. We have to change our lifestyle first. And of course, at the government and the higher level policymaker also have to take the decision. As soon as possible, we have to start using more of the electric vehicle or solar renewable energy, and that electricity should also come from not from the carbon the coal plant, but from other much newer or cleaner sources of energy. Without that, I don't think the situation is going to change. At the front line, we are facing we as a frontline doctor who are actually treating patient in Kokrajhar or Uttarakhand or in Kashmir Valley, or floods in Bihar or in Patna cities. We are seeing that how the rain pattern has changed, and the massive flooding is happening, and the people are dying in front of us. So we can clearly see the link between the climate change and death happening everywhere across India. And since last few years, it has increased tremendously. In fact, I just wanted to share in 2019, we have responded to 9 emergencies in just 1 year. And most of those emergencies are directly or indirectly related to climate change. So we are facing it. And now, in fact, I would say this Corona is a good thing that the health sector or the huge gap or need of health sector was totally neglected. Now everybody is talking about the strengthening of health sector, and they are understanding the importance of a health sector, the strengthening health facility. So from my side, for the policymaker, I would say the 3 key recommendations. The one is the inclusion of climate change and its impact on health into our curriculum. Still, there is not a single chapter on how climate change is impacting our health. Lancet Journal, they did one very good study commission on impact of climate change on health. But all these things should move from journal to our books in UG, PG, and not only for allopathic like MBBS, MD, but for all Ayush, Ayurveda, Homeopath, Unani, all curriculum, medical, nursing, all. That is my first thing, and include the picture shown by Dr. Arvind into that chapter. The second is we have to strengthen our primary and secondary health center and primary and secondary level healthcare services. As you know, this climate change induced this impact is maximum felt by those who are poor, vulnerable, staying in the high risk zone like coastal area or area prone to flooding like in Assam, Bihar, West Bengal, Odisha, all these areas. So we have to strengthen the primary. And in this COVID crisis, we have all seen that even in places like Delhi, we are looking for the beds. So considering this, that now we are facing these crises, mega crises more frequently, we have to set up much bigger center. Like in Delhi, fortunately, we have Commonwealth Game Stadium or Yamuna Sports Complex. We have immediately converted those into COVID center. But if you go to other districts, we hardly find any big facility where we can set up this 500 or 1000 beds hospital. So building that kind of infrastructure at the primary and secondary level, district level, is also extremely important, not just for pandemic like COVID, but even for the routine like every 10 years there are 2 or 3 big outbreak happening globally. The third and another most important, urgent, and I think something which can immediately be doable is the gap assessment or the assessment of all the health facilities located in these vulnerable area. You must have seen the news from Patna that Nalanda Medical College mein machli aa gaya. Here also, even in many COVID care center, the water is entering inside. So all these health facilities are located closer to the or low-lying area or very badly planned. And they similarly, there are many health facilities which are very old, very prone to collapse after earthquake, especially located in Indo-Nepal border or northeastern state. Similarly, for cyclone, you see the health facilities in Odisha, all the western border, and now here in Mumbai and Gujarat border also, we are facing regular cyclones. So the health facility should not collapse. And for that, it's very, very important to strengthen the health, either constructing new facility or retrofitting, or by strengthening the existing one or increasing the level, because without good functional structurally safe hospital, how doctor can manage this crisis. So these are the 3 major recommendation, I would say. And I am very much frustrated. That means this is not a time to talk. Now we need to act. Otherwise, as Dr. Arvind said, that our ancestors did nothing. If we also do nothing and keep quiet and I am safe, so don't worry, my family is safe, don't worry, then we have to pay very, very heavy price. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, sir. And I know that you come from personal experience right in middle of, and especially recently, the double whammy, the cyclone and pandemic, to deal with both of them together, and more and more of such events happening. I mean, we are still waiting for the next heat wave, and probably
Correct.
third wave happening together. And how are we going to cope with that? I especially, 2 things. One, about inclusion of climate change and health in curriculums, school, college, medical curriculums. I think It's interesting that we still don't have it. Yeah, and you're right. The time to do it is now. We cannot taking any action on climate change or public health, or air pollution. The time to do it is now, sir. Thank you very much. There is one more thing you talked about. The structural adaptation that our infrastructure has to go through. And I'm very pleased that later in the discussion, we have an example from Kerala that Dr. Manu will, I'm sure, will share of how they rebuilt an hospital to be climate resilient, to disaster resilience, to build disaster resilience. So that's later. Thank you very much, sir, and all the very best. I know you're in the field and in the thick of it, and we look forward to your regular guidance and follow up on this in a later date. Thank you, sir. Our now the first two speakers have touched upon so many important issues already, and the fact that both of them are important drivers of change. One of the things about curriculum that is being talked about, and that was also an identified need, like I said, from our survey, that we need more information on climate change and health impacts. And that is what we have tried to address in a very basic way. The No Vaccine for Climate Change guidebook actually will be useful for everyone. We've tried to do it in such a way that your most basic questions are answered on typical impacts on health because of climate change, the drivers of climate change and health impacts, what to do about these health impacts, whether it is a heat stroke or whether it is the allergens or whether it is disasters. So the guidebook is actually divided as per impacts and gives guidance on what can you talk to, how to talk to your patients, how to talk to, and what can the health sector do for each of these impacts, climate change related, climate change impacts. Next, we have, in fact, Dr. Molly Mehta. She is the president of Medical Students Association of India, or did I make a mistake there? One second. She's the president of Medical Students Association of India. In fact, today is her first day in that role after having been vice president of the MSAI External Affairs. She is, of course, an intern doctor in a hospital in Ahmedabad, and she brings a very important constituency on board, which the climate movement needs to speak to as well, is the young doctors, the young medical public health professionals out there. So Dr. Molly, may I invite you to share your opinion, views, and thinking?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction. And it is an absolute honor to be on this panel and talk about such an extremely important matter, which is impacting health in full force as of now. So thank you so much again. I would like to start by saying that we've heard about this at some or the other point in our lives, and we don't realize the change we are capable of. And I'm sure that all of us attending the panel right now, the participants who are listening to us right now, would have heard this at some or the other point in their professional or personal lives. And this applies heavily in the case of future healthcare professionals working on climate change and health. Uh, we already have established through our previous discussions that how climate change forms is an extremely important determinant of health. And considering we are all future doctors, considering all future doctors here, we form as one of the primary stakeholders in progressing towards the betterment of the healthcare of people around us. It indeed is our responsibility to link these two thematics of climate change and its impact on health, and build the ability of future healthcare professionals in understanding the role of this changing environment as a very, very potential risk factor, and the role of it on the pathophysiology of diseases. I recently stumbled upon a statistics which said that between 2030 and between 50, it's a statistic by WHO only, that climate change is anticipated to cause approximately 250,000 human lives annually. And owing that to malnutrition, malaria, diarrhea, heat stress. Uh, I'm very sorry for the please pardon me for the disturbance. I'm
No problem. No
uh,
problem.
thank you so much. As I was saying that, as I was talking about the statistic which I had about between the year 2030 and 2050, and I feel that as budding doctors right now, it's time for us to maybe start knowing about such an important thematic in which we can bring change. I'm sure that all of us here know of how in the initial years, when when we're toddlers, or between the years of 3 and 5 years, the grasping power which a child has, it affects and impacts a lot of their habits in the future, in their lives ahead. Similarly, when we are when we're starting our career as future healthcare professionals, that is in our MBBS, that is our those are our budding years of being doctors, of of dreaming ourselves, of working in hospitals, of working for the society. And that's when the realization of combating climate change and health should settle in. There are many limitations to this, to be entirely honest, and one of the major limitations of this being of this not being included in our medical curriculum. It's again not entirely that it's completely omitted from the curriculum. It is covered in bits and pieces, but it's very difficult to connect those dots, being such an amateur in this field. And I say that from personal experience, because when I first read about climate change and health, I couldn't connect the dots very clearly. It was only when it was only through MSAI, or through such panel discussions, which I came across to know more about climate change and health, to understand it further, and to realize that how intensively this is one area where young healthcare professionals can make such a massive difference. So that's where I feel, and that's where I would want to talk about the guiding document, which is so beautifully curated and which puts everything in one place. I mean, at this point, sometimes I feel that I wish I had exposure to such a document when I was in my first and second year of MBBS, and my batchmates were working as interns right now. They had such an exposure, because for any first step you would like to take, or for any change you would want to start working on, the first very basic step is reading upon it or doing your own research. And climate change and health is something which, the more you read about, I think the more it drives you closer to work over that change, and to bring to see those statistics going down, which Dr. Arvind, Dr. Ravikant spoke about. And this is where you'll come in touch with climate heroes like Dr. Arvind, Dr. Ravikant, and that will just push you further in working more towards this. So that is the reason I feel that it's extremely important for us being the future doctors of the country, of us being a part of the foundation of the future healthcare of our society, to start working on climate action and health, to to do your own bit, as we say. And just to touch upon how MSAI has been working on climate change and health. First, we recently readopted our policy on health and climate action at our annual conference, which was just conducted a couple of days back. We have also worked with Doctors for Clean Air here and Lung Care Foundation on the occasion of International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies, and also worked on a panel discussion to talk about the role of young medical professionals on climate action. And we also have conducted several on-ground awareness sessions before the pandemic, and recently everything turned online. Awareness sessions to talk about climate change, to talk about climate change and health, to talk about sanitation, water pollution, air pollution, to basically touch upon these thematics which the guidance documents puts in place very systematically. And we aim to keep bringing this change, amplifying this change further, getting as many medical students, healthcare students as we can on board to uh, to help us accelerate and amplify this process further. And with that, I would like to conclude by saying that whoever is watching us right now, and whoever just to take that first step towards bringing that change we're talking about, and to realize the power you have as the future healthcare professionals uh, to bring climate action and health together, and make that difference, make your own difference, and do your own bit. So with that, I would like to conclude, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, for bringing the perspective of young healthcare professional, because I feel that's going to be the foundation ahead. And until and unless they don't realize it, we won't be able to go ahead. So thank you so much again, Shai.
Thank you, Molly. You actually gave me goosebumps because you gave me hope. I am really grateful that you are in this new position. Congratulations again. And I'm sure you're going to drive this message harder in the coming months and years, and we get some action. But you gave me goosebumps, Molly. Thank you very much. I think it's not only important to engage, but we also need to see action, and the action I imagine will only come from young people. Thank you again, Molly. We have also today, and this is also something that I'm very excited about, uh, state nodal officers from Karnataka, Kerala, and Chhattisgarh. People who actually, for everything that we hear about our governments, these are people actually on the ground in the government taking real action with what little resources they have. I would now welcome Dr. Kamlesh Jain from Chhattisgarh. He's State Nodal Officer for Climate Change and Human Health in state of Chhattisgarh, government of Chhattisgarh. He's also a professor of community medicine in Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru Medical College in Raipur. He has worked extensively on urban health, NPCDCS programs, and development of health and wellness center under Ayushman Bharat project across India. Sir, please, we would like to hear your experiences and get some inspiration from you as well. Dr. Kamlesh Jain, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sai. Very good morning, all of you. I think it's a good afternoon. Oh, okay, it's a good morning because it's a before 12 we
2 minutes.
reached. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And at most, actually, I would like to thank the organization for working with me continuously, supporting me for this, and even changing my mind as you have introduced me very nicely. I'm in a Department of Medical Education and Health Services, both side working as a nodal officer for so many programs. And this is very important program. And I got this assignment from the government. The organization which are working with us as a partner, probing me time to time, is a healthcare without harm and health energy initiative, and SHRC is in a continuation with me, in touch with me. So I would like to thankful for this organization. This type of advocacy documents, our needs, they are fulfilling it, and I got the opportunity to share the experience of Chhattisgarh. Within 5 minutes, I will try to finish it off. You must have heard about this Chhattisgarh. It's a tribal dominant state. It's a young state, carved from this Madhya Pradesh. They are almost old, but very good in forest, river, ponds, natural resources, and renewable, even non-renewable energies with us. But the climate change is not in very much favor if we will not work for, as Dr. Arvind and Dr. Molly shared with us, we need to work hard to clean the air. This is very important, and this is a global concern. It is not a only state or it's like a corona COVID, where all the states and country and across the world we are working for it. The same situation is for the climate change. But yes, corona has a vaccine, but we do not have a we do not have vaccine for this climate change. So this is one thing. It's a global concern. There are a lot of health impact which has been shared by Dr. Arvind sir. Even Molly was also sharing with us. So I don't want to go in that details, but definitely it's a matter of concern, and health department can do wonder on this matter. And we have done something in a state of Chhattisgarh that I wanted to share. You know, the every health systems require a multi-dimensional approach, like a one person should work for the evidence generation, one person should work for this awareness generation, one person should work for the health system strengthening, and other things are also important. And once the policy and advocacy will be online, then only we will able to implement the program. And exactly we worked these things in actually Chhattisgarh, and we started it for the climate change, and the vibrations are very high right now. And I just want to share one thing, like we have an institutional arrangement now. SHRC is a support agency. The healthcare without harm and healthy energy initiative, they are working with me, so that I'm daily getting something. Yes, we need to work hard. So there is an institutional arrangement. There is a arrangement, means the top authority, honorable health minister, is always committed for climate change. The government is always asking what is going on this thing. So these are the institutional arrangement. We have a task force. One, on the other hand, SHRC is working for the research and advocacies also. So they are having some ground level realities. They are sharing with us what is going on terms of pollution, in terms of water pollutions and other things. So we have a scientific environmental monitoring advocacy systems, real-time low-cost monitors, ATMOS. We have some tool with us, so that we are getting a results. So this is one thing is also with us. So we are having some push mechanisms. On the other hand, we have a very good sensitizational workshop. We had with the officials. Even we thought ki panchayat members and the community health volunteer, which is one of the greatest thing of Chhattisgarh. We have a 70,000 community health volunteers working hard. So they should be trained for it, and we have done it. Now we have a module for them. Panchayat Raj members, almost 20,000 Panchayat Raj members have been trained with some modules which have been prepared with the organizations support. So that things are going on. Now the time has come. It's very good. Actually, report came out from this report which was shared by the SHAI. Actually, healthcare workers are not knowing how to work for the climate change. At least now we have a module which is going to be launched. Jalvayu Parivartan Hai Koi Itna Nahi. So now this will be launched. This has been launched today and going to be launched. And in the state of Chhattisgarh will be highly committed for this book. Actually, so we want to scale it up actually and generate the knowledge for it. So these type of mechanisms are there now. And we will work for it. And the future plan, if you want to say, so it's a like vulnerable mass, one of the priority, and infrastructure policy for the state government, like for the public health facility, we should have equipment which should be energy friendly, or something energy saving, like solarization. We have done in the state of Chhattisgarh through CREDA. Actually, the solar plants have been established in public health facilities. We need to we need to go down for the sub-center, but at least district hospital, community health center, and primary health centers have been covered. So these arrangements, the institutional arrangement, infrastructure arrangements are going on. Now we will go further. The equipment and we should have equipment policies, and we should have some other policies for the health sectors. Greenery should be there, and all health facilities, almost 40% areas should be covered with the green. These type of arrangements. So these are the future plan. I will work with my friends, colleagues, Sweta ji, particularly Punita ji, Sweta ji, Gunjan is currently in touch with me for this workshop. So I'm very much thankful to all of you, and thankful to the government who is supporting me for all these arrangements. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for making time and being here. And thank you for sharing what is already happening in Chhattisgarh. I have also heard from Shweta that your government and your department is the most progressive in the region, and you're taking a lot of action with the guidance of your minister. We look forward to hearing more of what you're doing, what can be replicated and taken elsewhere. And of course, take some of the best examples and amplify them, talk about them to the rest of the world. So we wish you all the very best, sir, and look forward to hearing more from you in the near future. Thank you. Next, we have, thank you very much. Next, we have Dr. Veena V. She is also a state nodal officer of Karnataka for climate change and human health. And she's going to do a quick 5-minute presentation on the initiatives of the Karnataka Government Health Department. Welcome, ma'am.
Yeah, very good morning to all of you. At the outset, I thank the organizers for having given me an opportunity to speak about what's happening in Karnataka. It's been an honor to be amidst the best speakers of the day today. I was really overjoyed to listen to most of the talks this morning. In spite of the busy schedule today, I made it a point that I stay back all through the program. Thank you so much. So I just go ahead with what has been happening in Karnataka.
Yes, please.
Share the slide. Okay. Now, you all know I come from a state which is situated in the northwestern part of the country. Well, Bangalore was once called as a garden city. Well, now it's called, I think, as a garbage city. I really feel bad for it because we are not finding much of the plants as it was earlier. We also had another district, Mysore, which is called as the pensioners' paradise, where most of them after retirement would go to Mysore to settle there because of the greenery over there. But I'm so sorry to say that slowly this garden city and the pensioners' paradise has been slowly converted as the Silicon Valley of Asia. This is because of the flourishing information technology and industry. Well, making use of the technology, I think we are harming the nature, well, which could have been probably avoided. Now, the changing environment is expected to cause more heat stress. Of course, we've been seeing that in our state, an increase in the waterborne diseases, poor air quality, and the diseases transmitted by insects and rodents. Now, we have certain priority diseases that has been identified in Karnataka. That could be malaria, dengue, a respiratory infection, acute gastroenteritis, or malnutrition. And we've also mapped to those districts and blocks where this is more prevalent. Now, action has also been initiated to ensure to curb all these in this particular region. Now, moving further, a state action plan has been placed, and to put this plan into action, we have formed the state level governing body and the state task force body. A state nodal officer has been identified, which has been me. I've just taken charge about 2 months back. We also identified the district nodal officer from the districts. And apart from that, we have also identified the roles and responsibilities of the various stakeholder departments. Moving further, we have the roadmap of Karnataka, wherein one is the strengthening of the infrastructure at both the state level and the district level by forming the environmental health cell. At the state, and of course, we are on the verge of appointing a consultant, and well, we have not got one because probably the resource envelope was not able to take more HR. So the government of India has instructed us to take one consultant from the other program who can work for the climate change and the human health. So we'll be working at the state level as the district level. District, again, we do not have the extra HR, but then with those, the vector-borne disease control program officers will be the nodal officers at the district. We are in coordinating with the various departments like forest, electricity, agriculture, the meteorological department, both at the state level and the block level. Here we're going to have various interactions with these department representatives and call for a technical meeting and form a guidelines. Now we're going to also have a vulnerability need assessment that is related to climate change in health. Now here the plan is to identify the 6 to 7 apical indices, which is vulnerable in Karnataka, and then the same assessment can be done and through the help of the Center of Excellence. Moving further, the climate resilient healthcare facilities, I think we're planning to ensure that the new buildings for the healthcare wherever is going to be constructed would be in terms of a construction of building which keeps it cool, probably like, like high ceiling. That is what we are also planning from the state level and across the state to have the uniform building construction, where we're involving the engineers from the health department to plan accordingly. Moving further, that's going to be 100% greening of all the healthcare facilities. We're going to also involve the Kayakalp, making sure that every facility has got both the herbal garden as well as the other horticulture plants. Now, our next process or the next stage, probably in the next 15-20 days, going to have the training modules ready, because we put a Gantt chart for the different blocks and the districts to have training, which will be rolled out from the month of July. We have finished one level of training of trainers at the state level and the district level. But however, I think we would like to take it forwards to ensure that this particular program will have more importance. I'm not trying to say that it's going to overrule others, but this is of the prime importance today. And of course, we are going to create the appropriate IC activities. Moving further, plan for 2021 is that we are designing the IEC of the climate sensitive diseases, both at the block level, district and the state level, because again, we need to tailor, it's a tailor-made IEC that will be made. It could be on air pollution, heat, or any other relevant climate sensitive diseases. The task force meeting to drop the healthcare sector plan for heat and air pollution is getting ready. Of course, I already said we have a Gantt chart for the various training programs, which has been scheduled from July. And moving further, I think we would like to support the district environmental health cell, which will be meeting regularly every once in 3 months. In essence, based on the daily reporting that we get from the IDSP, it could be on the heat wave illnesses, could be on dengue, malaria, or waterborne diseases. We would like to strengthen the existing surveillance system and develop a prediction models. We would like to link all this health database with the real-time monitoring on the climate weather, so that any changes occurring should be immediately reflected at the state. This is what we are planning for 21-22. And also commissioning the impact studies and follow-up evaluation. Like whatever activities been done either at the block level or the district level, we'll have to look at whether it is sustainable, and what are the lessons that we can learn from it, and what is the impact of that particular study. Moving further, we would like to identify and collaborate with the Center of Excellence to develop the guidelines, capacity building, and of course, monitoring. I think that is where we would like to strengthen our system, is by monitoring. They design and integrate the early warning system, both at the State Public Health Response Team and the Strategic Health Operations Center Response Team under the IDSP and the Emergency Medical Response. Moving further, using the mass media and through campaigns, the timely warning and alerts will be moving out, will be reaching to all the health professionals, stakeholders, as well as the general public. These are some of the activities that were conducted in 2021. A comprehensive plan of climate change was prepared under the leadership of the Development Commissioner, and EMPRI is a nodal agency. We have submitted the component of the health plan. On 7 September, the first International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies was observed. A public awareness campaign for women and children was also conducted on 7th of September for a week. We have oriented the medical officers at all levels, including the ANMs, junior health assistant inspectors, the BHOs, and the ASHAs. We have also shared them the training modules and flip charts in the local language. Now, 8 Sentinel hospitals across 8 districts had been identified for the surveillance of acute respiratory infections to assess the impact of the air pollution, and which is more so in Bengaluru. Now, the orientation of these nodal officers was done on 5th of October 2020. Now, who will be sharing the reports? Well, of course, it's not been that vigilant because of the COVID. Probably we'll be taking off now and ensuring that we get a daily report on this. These are slides, I think, which would like to show that how many of our facilities have been having this sort of rainwater harvesting. Around 31.3% have of the district hospitals have got the rainwater harvesting. Similarly, till the PHC level, we have ensured that phase-wise, every hospital will follow this particular part. Moving further, at least 89% of the district hospital has got this sort of gardening. 62% of the block level hospitals, 64% of the CHCs, and 37% of the PHCs have got gardening. Most of the district hospitals, I think now I'd like to take figure as 95 to 98% of them have got the district hospital, have got the output drinking water. And the solar system, of course, 50% of the facilities across the state have this sort of solar system being used. 75% being using this sort of LED bulbs. And I can promise you, but the next 3 months will ensure that this figures goes to 100. Now, some of the roles of the other health institutions is to, now what we are trying to stress them is to conduct the energy audit and the water audit at all levels. Could it be at the district level hospital, block level, or at the sub block, or it could be at the PHC level. And we are also insisting that the similar exercises occur in the various other public offices apart from health. I was just going through one of the chat boxes where one person had asked why only health department is asked regarding this particular climate change, why only health department has been held responsible. I feel every citizen of India is responsible for this climate change. And the more should start not only from the health department. I think going back, I'm including the education department. So I would like to tell you what exactly is happening at schools in Karnataka is that the child, when the RBSK, the Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karikrama mobile health team goes to the school, the first half an hour is taken for the IEC activity, where every day one topic is being spoken or chosen. And this particular topic, when it comes to a general topic, it is spoken in these prayers. Now, the topic is about it could be save energy, save water, how to discard a general waste, how to discard a sanitary pad, and importance of each one contribution to nature. Now, at the school, a few schools have got these activities done. I would like to roll it out to all the schools across Karnataka. Right now, we have taken up only the government schools, and my plan is to take up the private schools also, to ensure that every child has to plant a sapling. Now, it all depends. Maybe this sapling can be given to an 8th standard student, wherein the sapling will be given the name of that particular child who's planted the sapling. Now, and the response of the child is that to water this plant every day during lunch hour when there's a lunch break given. Now, as the sapling starts growing, probably at the end of the year when there is a parent-teachers meeting or a school day, these children are appreciated and they have a photograph along with their parents. So they can say, my sapling has grown to this particular tree. So I always tell them, like, now you give one, you buy 2 for free. What are those 2 free? One is that you get good oxygen, good shade. And second is that if it's a flowering plant, you get a flower, if you get a fruit, it's a fruit plant. So this is what we are trying to encourage the student at school. Apart from that, when we go to the colleges, I've asked my team to speak about the e-waste, the discarding of e-waste especially. And that's in the age group where I think we need to stress upon using these sort of a battery operated on an electric vehicle. They can also use a pooled vehicle, because these are the students, once they get into engineering or get into some of the IT/BT, I mean, they have the fashion of buying a lot of vehicles, so they can go buy a pooled vehicle. So this is what we've been stressing at schools and colleges, and rolling out to 21-22, we'd like to see more green in Karnataka. I hope we'll be able to do it with the help of the state government, who's been really good enough to cooperate. I thank Dr. Ravi Kumar, who's our regional director, who's been really a backbone of this particular program in Karnataka. I thank him. He's also there in this particular program. I thank you, sir. Thank you so much for it. So this is what I would like to present from Karnataka. Thank you, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the plans. They sound very exciting. And we wish you all the best, ma'am. I'm sure we will see a greener Karnataka very soon. Thank you very much. And finally, we have Dr. Manu. Has he joined, Shweta? Do I see him? State Nodal Officer from Kerala. Yes, great. He's also a respiratory doctor, which reminds me, we have Dr. Arvind Kumar had to rush to the OT, so he's left the panel for now. But let's get Dr. Manu on. Sir, State Nodal Officer of Kerala, he's also involved through a lot of other programs with HEI and doing some really inspiring stuff in Kerala, which he will share with us now.
Yeah.
So can we see you first?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Welcome,
Yeah.
Dr. Manu.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, I hope my screen is visible, sir, and I am audible as well.
Yes, you are.
Yes. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. First of all, good afternoon all. And at the outset, I will thank the Healthy Energy Initiative for giving us an opportunity to share some of our responses. Basically, the health system responses toward climate change and its impact on human health. So I will be briefly discussing what we have done under the program, National Program for Climate Change and Human Health, which has been launched from the 2019 onwards, and what we have done so far under the midst of this COVID as well. Basically, as prescribed by the NCDC, some of the organizational structures are in place in the form of environmental health cells. We have 14 districts in our state, and these environmental health cells are playing place in all these 14 districts and at the state level. And this is for the better coordination, planning, and also the implementation. And as we all know, a high deal of intersectoral coordination is needed while mitigating the climate change impacts. Governing councils and multi-sectoral task forces were also in place in these districts. And another area we did was the drafting of our state action plan, that what we will do in the coming days to mitigate the impacts of the climate change. After a series of deliberations and meetings, we drafted a state action plan considering the vulnerabilities of our state, with a vision to strengthen our healthcare services for the citizens, especially the vulnerable population, and to also reduce the morbidity, mortality, and injuries and health vulnerabilities due to climate variabilities. And the specific objectives were in the form of to create awareness, which we are giving the more importance now, to strengthen our capacity of healthcare system. These 2 points are the most important things now we are concentrating on, and thereby we can strengthen the health preparedness and response. And another aspect is to develop the partnership and also the research capacity strengthening as well. And we have in place the short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. As I said, the short-term goals mainly we are focusing on the awareness generation, the capacity building, and health system preparedness. Some of other activities, as pointed out in the earlier presentations, also we have initiated our ARI surveillance, that is to the acute respiratory illness surveillance, and to study its relation with the air quality index. We are initiated in our 3 of our districts in 6 institutions, medical colleges, and including the and as well as our district hospitals. But as said, due to the COVID pandemic, all these hospitals are converted to exclusive COVID hospitals. So there are some hiccups in now surveillance system. But this year we are planning to scale up to other districts and as well as other institutions as well as other hospitals as well. Then another area we are focusing is the heat-related illness surveillance. Right from 2016 we are doing it, and we have the strength of the surveillance system from the 2019 onwards, and we identified some of our vulnerable districts. We had about 180 odd cases in 2019, and one stroke heat-related death also. And in 2020 we had about 120 cases also. And then another area, even as we all know, the Kerala is famous for its green trees. Still, we are insisting We are promoting the greeneries in healthcare system, the various forms, especially we are coordinating with the agriculture department. They are promoting the cultivation as a soil specific cultivation in our land of the healthcare systems, and also promoting the medicinal plants as well. In almost all hospitals we have it. And apart from this, the green energy initiative in the form of solarization. Most of our hospitals are partly sol raised, and there this hospital we are utilizing this solarization for the e-health component. That is the e-health records and networking system is running exclusively on the solar system. This one, for example, for water boiling system, and this one is in a tribal hospital in Palakkad, Attapadi. The entire system is working on the solar system in that hospital as well as. And we initiated so many biomedical waste segregation systems which are environment friendly in our healthcare systems. Another area we started working on is to reduce the carbon emission. We are also in the Race to Zero campaign, and what we did was first to start the process. Last year we had done some of the energy audits first to find out what is really happening in institutions, and to know at what level we can do reductions. So we understood from the initial audit is that simple behavioral changes can also bring in a lot of carbon reduction, as well as the use of the renewable energy can. So that we have initiated, and now this energy audit system we will taking it to all our health facilities, and also with other programs as well, like national certification program. One of the component we will keep it as the energy audit as well. Then another area is working is regarding the climate resilience. In 2018, we had the disaster of a century in the form of floods, and so about 400 of our healthcare institutions had either partly or complete damage due to the flood situation, and that was a lesson for us. And while considering the rebuilding or restructuring of these institutions, the component of the resilience was in place. And so this is one of the example for one primary health center which was in Wayanad district, which was submerged during the in 2018 flood. And while rebuilding, that institution lost of their equipments, their electronic devices, the medical records of the patient, the medicines. So many losses were happened during that flood. And keeping those in mind while restructuring, some of the modifications has been in place in the form of converting it into a multi-storied building or a double-storied building with provisions for shifting the critical equipments and records to safely, and provisions for in the form of ramps, and also placing the grills metallic grills in between the compound wall to resist the water pressure. So a lot of other activities are also held. So now we have built modified these 400 institutions with keeping the climate resilience within our construction process as well. Then a lot of activities are going in the form of generations of IECs through the social media, the audio visual, the print media. So it's happening even in this midst of the. And another important aspect is regarding the training and capacity building, which is one of the very important component, and stakeholder meetings. Still in the COVID midst, we are able to do most of the training as we planned, and also developed modules even in the regional languages for the local workers, like healthcare workers, like ASHAs. We have done those modules as well. So to way forward, what we are expecting to do, what we're planning to do is first is in the promises of vulnerability. Apart from these activities, the vulnerability assessment in the disease per se, as well as the climate resilient per se. We have done the climate assessment, vulnerability assessment in relation to the communicable diseases in 2017, and we have identified the hotspots and the climate variabilities in the communicable disease. Now Kerala is prone for, as you know, famous for its non-communicable disease burden. And so our now focus, we are apart from the communicable disease, we are now focusing in the area of non-communicable disease as well. As even for an example, the heat can even impact the electrolyte imbalance of these in the non-communicable disease, which can hinder the life of which can affect the life of these families, people, and although also our life expectancy is also high, so elderly population being vulnerable. So those aspects will be definitely be considered while planning our service packages and delivery. Then another important aspect is discuss the intersectoral coordination of a different department, the meteorological department, the agricultural department, the educational department. So many departments has to come in, the environment department. There should be a good intersectoral coordination, so that we will be working on that. Then the integration with other programs, because we have a lot of our national as well as state initiatives, and those programs are having components which can help in the climate impact mitigation thing. So the integration with that programs will happen. Then the importance of early warning system. It is very much important that establishing and strengthening such a system through our data analysis with the help of the other departments. So we are working on that also. And apart from these, the domain specific action plans, we have general action plan, the state action plan, and now we are planning for some action plans for our specific for our state in the form of air pollution, and maybe to decentralize it to that level, a local level action plans. Maybe we will be promoting that one also. And our successful model of Kerala Health is always a decentralized plan, and we are trying to bring this decentralized plan right from the state level to district level, the panchayat level, to the ward level, to the village level activities and village level committees in the form of the scientific in the form of our planned task forces will be in place. So we are planning that also, decentralized planning in mind. And another area to learn from others, the peer learning. We have good examples from other states, and also for learning that we understand that the best thing is to document it and to share it, and also so peer learning is very much important, and so we will be documenting all these our activities also. So these are the things we are going to do in the coming days. We are planning to do in coming days, and our chief ministers already declared that the climate resilience is a major thing in not only in the health sector but in every sector. We will be doing the climate importance will be given to this climate resilience as well. On the World Environment Day has declared it. And also we will be joining the Race to Zero campaign. The Indian health system will be joining the Race to Zero campaign as well. So this is from my side. Once again, I thank the Healthy Energy Initiative for giving this opportunity. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Manu. As always, and I'm not saying this because I am biased, because I'm resident of Kerala. The Kerala model in every way is inspiring. In fact, I have suggested that we should be preparing a compendium of best practices in health sector from Kerala, which we can translate and share with other states, because so many of the things, everything from your decentralized system of governance and in each sector, including health sector, that makes decision making so much easy, and interdepartmental coordination. I think, and of course, you have the blessings of your government to go ahead and do the right thing, which is always a big driver. Thank you very much, sir. I was also very pleased to see the photo that you used in the state action planning, climate change action plan planning. Both Sanjay and I are in that picture, so we were very happy to see ourselves there. Thank you very much. This is a very this conversation today has thrown up more questions, and yet given us a lot of hope and answers as how how things can improve and how health sector can actually take lead in climate action. Yeah, both from adaptation, mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. There are a number of questions that have popped up in the Q&A box. Many of them have been directly addressed. Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Aarti, for responding to some of those questions. There are some specific questions that I would actually maybe ask Dr. Manu or Dr. Kamlesh, even Veena ji. One is, what specific health-related evidence is used to prepare a state action plan? Do you guys look at specific health evidence? Is it bottom-up, or is it like one general plan and then you try and... I think that's what is meant in that question. Would you like to address that, Dr. Manu?
Sure, sir. While drafting, we have a series of meetings. We used our data. It's basically from the healthcare, because most of our action plans, the topics of the action plan depends on disease specific burden, and also how we have done that. And so we have the data, our data in the form of the state level data, in the form of the NCD control program, from the communicable disease, from the vector-borne disease control, district-specific data we have. Apart from this disease-specific data, we have the support of the environment department as well. They have prepared the vulnerabilities, the climate vulnerabilities of our state. They have released their state action plan as well. And then we have the data from the coastal department, from the tribal department. So by keeping all these data together and collaborating this data, and we have a serious discussions, and using this data only, we have generated our state action plan. And this is not the final action plan. Basically, we will be updating and revising the action plan depending on the situation, the need. This is a preliminary document only, which we have released in 2001. We are planning to release. Actually, we had drafted and in place and sent to the NCDC. So as climate is a variable, our action plan it will be revised, depends upon the further vulnerabilities also this, and with the present available data and expertise from the stakeholders, we have compiled this, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Manu. I have another question here, and I think that will be the last question for today, because we're already over time, but this is also a very important question, something that most panelists touched upon, that it's the poorest of the poor, the most vulnerable, or like the person who's asked a question, the lower socioeconomic sector, people from that sector are most affected by climate change and infectious diseases. And how, Dr. Kamlesh, you said Chhattisgarh is, you still have a very poor population out there. How can we address, the person wants to know, on tackling this issue? Why is there such little research in this direction? Any of the panelists who would like to, Kamlesh ji, maybe you?
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yes, can you say again, please? Actually,
yeah, no, I think the question is how can, given that it's the poorest of the poor who are most impacted by climate change and infectious diseases, do we need to do more research, and how do we actually address? The rich can go to hospitals, the rich can afford things, the poor are completely dependent on the state for for relief. So what is your approach? Is the state government, I think that's what the question is.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. I would like to address this question in that way. First of all, it's the era of universal healthcare is going on. Okay, we are working for an equitable health distribution system, or based on the principles of equity we are working, and we have a all health card schemes for the poor and for even rich families also. But there is a demarcation. If the poor needs are high, then definitely we want to take care of them. State is, yes, I believe the public health system should be strengthened, and we should have evidences for it. The poor people should get all the quality of care at the public health facility. But private sectors are also there, and they are also providing services based on the insurance model and assurance model. So we cannot deny the services at both level. But I have a strong opinion poor should get all the health benefit of up to the optimum level. There is a need, and we will work for it. And if I want to connect with the climate change and other things, so definitely these poor people who are going to migrate other states, and they should get all the benefits. Just in that way, we are working.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think that addresses the question. I think there's room for one more question from a friend and colleague. When journalists try to report on morbidity or mortality due to climate change impacts, yeah, they face the problem of lack of data in public domain on cause of illness or death. Can any of you, again, government doctors, suggest a solution? Because it's very important for us to attribute what is causing what deaths when we report on these issues. Any solution to this? You know, why is there a clampdown? Is there a need? How can we share this data more public and easily in public domain? Dr.
If you're
Ravikant
asking me,
also, yeah.
Yes.
I'm throwing it open to the panel. Anyone, Dr. Ravikant, Dr. Manu, any of you, if you could throw some light on what we can do. This is the last question today.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, it's basically when journalists try to report on morbidity or mortality due to climate change impacts. Yeah, here Joydeep has used the example of pre-eclampsia. They face the problem of lack of data in public domain on the actual cause of illness or death, and then we need information like that to attribute. Yeah. So can you suggest a solution?
Yeah. So that's a very good question, and actually that is the problem, that we don't have that good quality data, or nobody. And this climate change is not a small issue; it's a big international. Right now, the G7 meeting is going on or just finished, so they have also just said the same thing again and again. No commitment, just hum log ye karenge, wo karenge, but nothing concrete really come out. So this is also very sensitive. So the issue, and especially in the India currently. So in fact, just now I think Sweta has shared that document, and then we get to know about that. We have some Government of India guideline also. So we don't know about I don't know about any concrete source of data from where we can get, or government sources where we can get data for each state, or at least on the national level. Usually in some journal, somebody sitting outside India published some article that air pollution is going to cause so many million deaths, or on an average life expectancy of daylight reduced by 7 year or 10 year. Then we secure, and then government say, this is not the thing that. So definitely I also don't know where to get this the data. But one way we can presume, like right now in Uttarakhand, very high altitude areas also, we are reporting cases of dengue and death because of dengue fever. So all these are actually directly impact of climate change, because earlier the dengue fever were not no cases of dengue at that high altitude, but now it is happening just because of the change in temperature and the climate change. So you can say these are the alternate way we can say that most probably this is related to climate change. But I don't know any reliable source of mortality related data. That's why maybe other Dr. Manu and other can add more. Thank you.
Yes,
Can I
sir.
come in, sir? Dr. Veena from Karnataka, sir.
Yeah, sure. Please.
So how about doing a death audit, like we are doing it in COVID time, that a death audit is done? Probably can we get some data, and then probably we need to have a portal where they upload the deaths on an everyday basis. If that can be done, sir, probably we can have the data from the districts.
Dr. Manu, you wanted
sir,
to add?
Yeah, sir.
How you will say that death is because of climate change?
Yeah, that's
even in COVID, there are lots of discussion. This death is because of heart attack, not of COVID. So,
Yes.
so it's a very difficult thing. The climate change, so even more difficult to link. We as a doctor, we know what is happening, but the policy maker, politician, they will never accept this.
Yeah. Dr. Manu, thank you.
Sir, first thing is that we have to have a confidence in our data. That is because proper reporting, and that is one thing why it is not in public domain. Because so a well-established system, an epidemiological surveillance system has to be there. First of all, then linking with the climate change, it's not that much easy because a lot of factors there. So causality association has to be we have to bring in. So that's a difficult task, whether it is linked to climate or any other factors. So it's a tedious process as well. While considering the mortality in the area of communicable diseases, maybe it will be easy, but so many other factors also, even the health system per se, how our health system responds also, it's a factor. Even it is, we can link to the climate one, what are the system, what are the things we have done to prevent that. So a lot of health system response, so a lot of factors had to be considered while considering a linking either a case or a mortality to a climate impact. And also, as of now, even in Kerala, we don't have an NCD for the NCD deaths audit per se. We are having the non-communicable disease, but we don't know what all factors are really causing the death of the NCD patients, non-communicable disease area also. So, which we are trying to bring in now. So, for this to be coming a public domain, there must be established, well-established, robust system has to be in place. And also another thing is that there should be some social auditing and things, the participation from the partnerships level also has to be there in supporting the state, because so many activities, so many things are in place under the health sector or in the government, people they're working. So to support them, a supporting system has to be there from the partnership organization also, and also the center of excellence also. Then in near future, I think we will be having some data definitely to the public in public domain. Thank you, sir. That's it. Sir, I think you are muted, sir.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you very much. All three interventions. Yes, Joydeep, I think your question will remain open till we put in systems that all three of them mentioned. I think that's work in progress. More maybe localized data from local hospitals will be able to give us some indication. But clearly, this is work in progress, a demand that we have to make, and a system that needs to be put in place, like a portal or something, as Dr. Veena suggested. Fantastic. I mean, we are 15 minutes over time. People haven't left this meeting. Panelists haven't run away. This is really informative and exciting. But we need to, finish the meeting now. Thank you very much, each and every one of you. I mean, you have raised the level of debate today. When I started pulling together this document, there was very little information, India-specific information. And I think today I understand better why this information is not out there, and how all of us have this huge task of making everything that you guys have shared and guided us on to multiply. We need more such dialogues. We need many more such discussions. And I look towards Climate Trends, Healthy Energy Initiative, Healthcare Without Harm, to make sure that we have more of these conversations with you people, and we come up with a real action plan for all the states and for the country. Thank you very much again. Please do not forget to download your free copy of No Vaccine from Climate Change. The website is up there. Sanjay, Dr. Ravikant, Dr. Kamlesh, Dr. Manu, Dr. Molly, Veena, Gunjan, Shweta, everybody out there, thank you very much. And all the 209 participants who stayed right till the end. Thank you very much. Namaste, and look forward to more actions.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes, and the recording will be available. Recording will be available to everybody for dissemination. Thank you.
We will have a click.
Okay, who wants to click? Oh, people.